Good morning. Hope I am clear and audible. So I'll get started. So thanks, Nadine. And we have a few last minute things which I'm sure we have forgotten. So we'll keep announcing a few things. So let me get started. So this is just almost like a recap of what we have done for the sort of updates on Wi-Fi, you can say. So my pointer is giving some last minute glitches, so I'll just try and manage with that. If it comes on soon, then I'll use this, otherwise that's okay. So this is going to be just a sort of an update on .11 Wi-Fi, but more importantly, I think I'll also point to other presentations which are happening where there'll be more details. So it's more than covering everything that I possibly want to say here. It's also a guide to the sort of speakers who are going to tackle some of these topics in detail, okay? And many of these, of course, will be available post the summit, but some might not be available, so just depending on the speaker's permission, we'll be able to share it, okay? So this will be a rough agenda. I'm going to kind of give you a status call on Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. Some of you who attended the pre-summit training, I might repeat a few facts, okay? Then we'll talk about what Wi-Fi 7 is bringing to the table. And even here, as you know, we have separate presentations on Wi-Fi 6E. So I'm going to kind of offload many of the discussion points to the team who's going to talk about that. A little bit on Wi-Fi 7. Some points about location roaming sensing. Again, we have speakers who are specifically going to cover aspects of open roaming. We have Wi-Fi Alliance talking about some of their initiatives here. So I'll point out a few points which are hopefully not addressed by them, and then also sort of kind of guide you to what they might be covering in more detail. We'll then talk about IoT and Wi-Fi. Again, a few notes from me, and then pointing to something which is going to be covered. A little bit on what's happening on the home segment, tip efforts, etc. Okay, so that's a rough agenda, and hopefully I'll finish in time to get enough time for questions. We want to promote interaction. Okay. So Wi-Fi 6 or 11AX, has it really achieved what it set out to achieve? Because if you look at the objective, it was basically to increase the throughput in what we call as a high density environment, primarily lots of stations under an AP, lots of APs around each other, operating on, say, close by channels or the same channel. And the whole idea was, instead of focusing on a rate increase, efficiency was the target in 11AX. And a few other things were attempted as a part of the 11AX standardization, like some IoT specific initiatives and some extensions to 6 gigahertz during the course of the standardization. So the question now is, of course, we all see a lot of marketing statements and product announcements. Question is, has it really achieved its objective, right? And in my opinion, I think we have no demonstrable improvement in high density performance or in any other manner, in a consistent manner. And this is kind of borne by no independent third-party studies which have shown that, okay, Wi-Fi 6 without those features that we have brought in, or almost comparing to Wi-Fi 5 in the same hardware, we haven't really shown anything groundbreaking for a generational upgrade, okay? I hope that will trigger more questions in the audience, right? So obviously there is new hardware, new RF, new techniques, etc. And some of the results that you will see, especially on the OFDMA front, from Alithya as well as from Multilink on the simulator side, should give you an idea of what is happening to a certain extent. Maybe, obviously, there are many more things one can do. There are white papers by vendors, but obviously you'll have to take them with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because it's obviously conducted in a way where you might not get the full flavor of what's happening in real life, okay? MU-MIMO has been around with us from 11AC days. Seems like, at least conceptually, it should have improved things, but again, we have consistently not seen anything good happening there. And IoT-related improvements like TWT, again, it's becoming more like a tick mark feature rather than actual improvements to, as I said, some things on the IoT front. And spatial reuse, lots of academic papers, both spatial reuse and TWT is wonderful for academics, but really when it comes to real life, we have just not seen anything translating to something which I can say, okay, this will consistently do something for us, okay? If you are a client vendor, I really don't know why you want to go to Wi-Fi 6. Again, I'm being provocative so that I want to see some discussion. I really don't know, because there is more complexity, and what can you show for it? I mean, I'd love to hear a client vendor counter my claim. I'm happy to accept that. So then when I was speaking about this to somebody very high up in a big chip company, right? He said, hey, we are selling Wi-Fi 6 like hotcakes. What are you saying? The reason Wi-Fi 6 is selling like hotcakes is that there are completely other matters around. We don't have, you go to somebody, they can't sell you Wi-Fi 5. So you want a Wi-Fi product, you're stuck with Wi-Fi 6, okay? So things like chip shortages, and people think 6 must be better than 5. So you flash a 6 in a box, and that must be better than 5, so I'm willing to throw some extra money at 6 as compared to 5, okay? So it's good for the industry that Wi-Fi 6 somehow has gotten through due to various reasons, but if only one looks a little deeper, maybe there are some lessons that people in the industry should probably learn, that we can't just like that bring very complex features and expect them to work just like that, okay? So those are, I think, some takeaways, at least for me and some people whom I kind of have discussed this, okay? So, is there hope? That's also because people say, oh, somebody says, we are still improving. Of course, we've been selling Wi-Fi 6 for the last 5 years or so, 4 years, 5 years, whatever be the time frame. So, can we expect something better? It's not for a lack of trying. I've seen people put a lot of effort in trying to get 11AX to the points that they want. But we still, I don't know how much more they will try, simply because there are other things to focus on. Like what? Wi-Fi 7. So why would you want to go back to Wi-Fi 6 and try and do some incremental improvements just to get something of real value and use? Because remember, marketing hype, just putting Wi-Fi 7 in your next box can get you much more ahead in the game than trying to improve Wi-Fi 6, okay? And clients also, a lot of people are also sold on the myth that we should have scheduled access in Wi-Fi. If you wanted scheduled access right from day one, we should have had a PCF track. Not bring it in OFDMA or MU-MIMO, which is a half-baked effort, right? Where technically speaking, unless you have very deep client cooperation, you can't really have scheduled access, okay? And clients in Wi-Fi are very different from cellular. For a lack of better word, I say they have a mind of their own, and we have literally cultivated that they want to do what is best for them, right? They are not depending on access points to do what is best for them, okay? Because we also see a lot of different access points. As a client, I might see a very good access point which might do the best things for me. I might see a lousy thing which might ask me to do something else. So clients have also developed, sort of a thick skin where they said, I'll take care of myself because I don't know what the access point is going to do, okay? So in that world, how can you expect clients to do all the things that you want them to do for scheduled access to work, okay? So scheduled access myth, I hope we can maybe correct that sentiment and see that maybe something else is better than going for full-fledged scheduled access. And this falling into the trap of comparing with cellular, it's a very tricky game. Cellular people want us to compare with them. When I say us, I also have a hand in cellular, but today being in Wi-Fi camp, I'll say Wi-Fi community should never fall into the trap of being compared with cellular, okay? Then you should compare it with all the metrics, including the money that you spend on everything in cellular. Then it will be a fair comparison, okay? Cellular from day one has had scheduled access and primarily driven by licensed spectrum kind of costs and other initiatives, okay? So Wi-Fi's appeal lies in something else, that it can be easy to set up, low cost, putting it into all kinds of products. We should never lose that in the sort of race to become very controllable and very predictable and all that sort of things that we get from the so-called cellular world, etc. Okay? So much for 11AX. Any good news Wi-Fi 6 had was the 6 gigahertz came online. And so this helps Wi-Fi 6 simply because 6 gigahertz spectrum means you can have to have Wi-Fi 6, which means that I want a 6 gigahertz product, you need to have Wi-Fi 6 along with that, okay? Wide bandwidth is probably the major thing along with clean spectrum and adoption of latest security packs. These are some of the clean things that you will see in 6 gigahertz. Obviously, it's going to take time. Some people say we can do scheduled access in 6 gigahertz. There is no forcing of scheduled access. Remember, I told you, clients will do what is best for them. I don't think we are enforcing that. If at all anybody wanted to enforce, they should have gone to the PCF and the hybrid coordination functions that were there in the standard long time back. Will not having legacy help? Not in a way which people think that we will do something different at a PPDU level, but some scheduling where we don't have to worry about the fact that there are 11AC stations to be served and 11N to be served along with 11AX. So I think there is something to be done here where the scheduler has only 11AX stations which probably support at least some base features. So we should be able to do a slightly better job here, okay? Benefits of 6E, remember that we could do this because I'm not burdened with legacy while scheduling. So can we get this right, at least for the cases that where OFDMA or MU-MIMO work? I think indirectly we are getting the latest security practices, which includes no open or no unencrypted networks, okay? Which probably is good overall, okay? And cleaner practices, which is basically scanning randomly with broadcast and all those kinds of stuff are going to be slightly cleaned up. So we are hoping that things are going to be nicer in 6 gigahertz, especially given that it's going to be slightly higher end products. We're not going to be burdened with light bulbs and doorknobs and all those kinds of things, which are generally the ones which are doing all kinds of cheap implementations overall for 6 gigahertz. Okay? The challenges for 6 gigahertz are that the client adoption will take time. Okay? It's not going to be so easy that people are going to absorb the costs. Okay? So Infra probably has to take the lead and put it in there, and the cost and complexity is going to hurt the pocket somewhere. Okay? Enterprise, about which Jatin will talk, will need more time, right? Jatin and Prayas, I should add, from Arista. And then Sujata will follow up on this session to talk about AFC, right? Which is going to be important when we want certain higher powers or when we want, for example, outdoor implementations, etc. Okay? So there are challenges to get 6 gigahertz to really become as widespread as maybe 2.4 and 5. But I think it's probably a nice step for the future and also promotes Wi-Fi 6 and beyond. So next comes, as I said, the industry's focus is already on Wi-Fi 7 with all the announcements starting from chipset vendors all the way to everybody in the industry talking about how great Wi-Fi 7 is going to be, right? What is going to be the main theme? It's going to be rate. I think after being with Wi-Fi 6 and seeing high efficiency, we learned we really can't crack that problem so easily. So let's just up the rate. Put higher numbers on boxes. Nothing sells like 30 gigabit, 45 gigabits, 90 gigabits, I don't know, whatever numbers are possible, okay? So rate is EHT, that's why, extreme high throughputs. So that is going to be the main marketing theme. Of course, there are going to be a few other objectives as well, like latency, which is garnered a lot of attention, maybe reliability. And there are some tricks in the standard like Multilink, which is exciting from a technical feature point of view, but I just don't want to I want to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes. OFDMA was an exciting feature, but then probably we couldn't really realize the full benefits of that. So let's hope that Multilink doesn't suffer the same fate and maybe has a better run, okay? We should see better use of multi-band because by the time Wi-Fi 7 comes, I think 6 gigahertz is going to be slightly more firmly entrenched. A lot of, I would say, elaborate techniques specified for flexible bandwidth usage. I'm a little worried because the complexity of all this is mind-boggling in terms of the signaling and the possibilities. It's nice for me as a technical person to look at all that. But when I look at the actual implementation, I find that all this flexible bandwidth usage of preamble, puncturing, and multiple RU allocation, how well it is going to be realized in practice, okay? So that's always a constant worry given the fact that we want to make Wi-Fi slightly simpler as well, okay? And of course, when I say Wi-Fi simpler, Karthik will talk about going down. Instead of 7, he's going to go down to 0, right? Or maybe even below, okay? So this is the Multilink, you can say, highlight in the sense that it can have impacts on latency by opportunistically choosing the band which is available. It can aggregate links to give you better rates, okay? Not just restricted to downlink, which is AP to star, but also star, uplink star to AP. And you can have simultaneous transmit and receive. which is you can be transmitting on one band, receiving on another band. So these are very exciting possibilities. Hopefully, as I said, how we get to the products and make sure that we keep certain facts that the clients are not going to cooperate in all nice manner, and you're going to have a wide variety of clients which are going to support, very variety of things, keeping their objectives as front and center. Okay. Challenges. People often ask me, should I wait for Wi-Fi 7 before buying 6E? I think Jatin will comment more on that, Jatin and Prayas. So I'll leave that. This is always a perennial question. Should I invest in 6E or wait for 7 before I invest in 6E? Okay. So that is one. I'm really worried that we have thrown a whole lot of features, and hopefully we will not make it mandatory for client and do something and then get disappointed. Okay. And this is always a constant worry that it's not going to have a OFDMA, MU-MIMO kind of experience. We are still searching for the update. MU-MIMO almost 10 years now, right? Where we can't just turn it on blindly and expect it to always do good, right? I always say that if you give it to me for free, I don't have a problem. But since people charge for that feature, I expect that at least X% of the time, a very high X% of the time, it should do good. Unfortunately, that I cannot get a guarantee of, okay? There is, I think we will see a lot of product differentiation because so many features have been thrown, and that, as you know, in a Wi-Fi ecosystem with a wide variety of client base is going to be a challenge. So let's hope that at least we'll realize some of the main benefits of Wi-Fi 7 going ahead. Now just changing track, what about a few other areas? For example, Wi-Fi is not only going to improve the throughputs, latencies, and so on, there is also going to be location-related initiatives. I think Wi-Fi Alliance has invested a lot. Param will talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to point out that indoor location, proximity services, these are some areas where Wi-Fi has been trying and struggling a little bit to find the product sweet spot, not for a lack of standards. But I think what has propelled this whole industry a little bit further is this UWB. Because suddenly Apple started putting an ultra-wideband chip in their phone, everybody has woken up saying we need to also do something about it from their product perspective, and standards have woken up and said we need to do something about it. If I'm Wi-Fi standard, what am I doing? Because I have a nice ecosystem of Wi-Fi access points all around me. Can they not be used better to provide the indoor navigation, location, etc.? Of course, Bluetooth is not going to give up being saying we are in practically every device. So can we do something also about it? So there is, I would say, a healthy way to look at least these three technologies for indoor. I'm saying mostly indoors, that's what I'm talking about. Of course, outdoors, GPS comes in, then there is cellular involved in that whole thing. Okay. So what is .11 doing? .11 has been doing something. It's just that we haven't seen the product ecosystem click on this. So fine timing measurement has been around where you can, much before UWB, time was used to then ergo infer distance, etc. But as I said, the problem has been to get it to an application level where you can see this being used for some indoor navigation, etc. So are we doing something better? So 11AZ is the next improvement, which is now trying to address certain things which we missed in the fine timing measurement. It also brings in some of the security concerns. So people are worried that even in the timing exchanges, there are security concerns. And UWB solved that problem first. And so that's why you have this car key which can open the car as you walk in close to that car, a high value vehicle, I presume, or some other asset, right? So Wi-Fi also is bringing that at Mac and Phi, how to bring security, how to use the wide bandwidth and multiple antenna features, okay? So as I said, the challenge is we have enough technology, and we have seen the first real product offering. For those of you who followed the news from Aruba, they've probably brought it to some level of usage where, at least for their infrastructure, they are now using the location to do interesting things. And maybe with AFC, etc., this can be used for the access points, pinpointed location, and so on, okay? But there are other initiatives, Param will talk about Aware and so on. I think all of them can use some of these to do some interesting stuff, like I discover that you are here and then automatically can do some peer-to-peer stuff, etc. Okay? Wi-Fi sensing, I spoke about this last time as well. There is a lot of buzz of what you can do in indoor environments. I picked this from the contributions in the standard BF is this offering, right? People are looking at indoor environments where you can do a variety of things in Wi-Fi sensing. And if you're wondering how, they're going to use deep physical layer knowledge. Like these are the sort of examples given in the standardization where they're looking at the physical channel response and doing some algorithms in the back end to predict has somebody walked into the room or somebody fallen down or something else, as you know, left to imagination. We already have products, okay? These products don't use a standardized framework as of now. They use all proprietary APIs from the chipsets and do something. The 11BF standards wants to standardize some exchanges so that you can have a cooperative mechanism by which an access point can ask the various units to send a sounding packet based on which you can do the channel estimation, and then you can do a lot of interesting stuff there. So this area is primed, especially in the home segment initially, and maybe if it's successful there, it probably can then come into other segments. Okay? IoT and Wi-Fi, as I said, Sagar from ExpressIF will talk more, but just to mention, yesterday somebody during the training asked, what about Wi-Fi Halo 11AH? So yes, 11AH had the attention of the mainstream chipset makers some time back, but today this has gone into a separate area, sub 1 gigahertz, kind of longer range, lower rate kind of Wi-Fi. That's the target for Wi-Fi Halo. Is it going to come to an access point near you or a client device near you? I don't think as of now we see that trend. It's almost like a separate segment of products, okay? And the nice thing is that on the IoT side, this initiative, which is of course not at the 802.11 level, but more at the application level called Matter, which is involving the big ecosystems of Amazon, Google, etc., they are coming together to use Wi-Fi thread, which are natively IP oriented, to kind of do cross-vendor IoT control and optimizations, okay? So it needed that because there's no point in having a Wi-Fi light bulb, Bluetooth light bulb, thread light bulb. All those things need to kind of come together so that from your Siri or Google Assistant, you can interact with a variety of devices, okay? So this is an interesting initiative which is kick-started in the last little while, and hopefully it'll come up there. And open roaming is also an interesting sort of initiative. Of course, we'll have more details from Lakshmi, Cisco, so I'll leave it to her to talk. But open roaming basically is trying to almost give a cellular-like experience. When you move into a new place, instead of asking for what's the password, and by the way, our Wi-Fi password will be given during the break. So the Wi-Fi password or SSID, just to connect the experience today. Tomorrow you could just walk in and you would have the credentials on your phone and so on, and you have some provider here who is automatically giving you access. You will securely get authenticated and can use it, okay? So we'll hear more about that. What about the home front? EasyMesh is evolving. A little bit of this from Apricom will come out on the AI ML side, okay? So EasyMesh is trying to run too fast in my opinion. Already we have release 4. So I don't know whether people have digested release 2, but release 4 is up. So there is a little bit of catching up from products, etc. But generally this link over wireless backhaul across the APs in a home environment, multi-AP environment, easy onboarding, including the latest sort of DPP kind of mechanisms, a lot of channel optimization in the case of DFS, standardized diagnostics, so a variety of interesting things there, okay? So again, it's something that we will see probably mature in the last little while. And finally, this is, Sitarama will talk about this. So this is another effort by TIP is basically Telecom Infra project, started by a variety of vendors, where they're trying to kind of make it easy for people to buy hardware from different vendors and load some common software and have APIs higher up, which can then now have cloud management and all other intelligence. Sitarama will also present some testing results that they have done with this particular ecosystem, okay? So the final question is, will 5G kill Wi-Fi? This is often asked of me, is 5G going to destroy Wi-Fi? Again, my opinion, though we have equal business in both, or probably more in 4G, 5G. So I don't think 5G will kill Wi-Fi simply because still 5G or 4G is still restricted to one device. And Wi-Fi, of course, has a much broader ecosystem. And Wi-Fi, remember, as long as we don't fall into the trap of making Wi-Fi too complex, I couldn't stress this often. as a technical person, maybe you want to throw in a lot of stuff, but you don't want to make it too complex that its cost and all the things that you bring in actually, make it counterproductive, and then 5G can come and say, I can do all these things almost at the cost of yours, right? And I think the 6 gigahertz band is just going to make things a little better as far as spectrum is concerned, okay? So I'll leave this to the last slide. I think I have some time for questions. I think we have some mics on. So, yeah. Gana, yeah.
Srikanth, there are two comments, one about the old technology, another one's new technology. You mentioned about the scheduled access. There used to be, I think it's still there, nav registering. You can actually request a specific time slot in the nav, right? And that is kind of semi, you can get the predetermined slots, right? What happened to the technology? Why people are not using it?
I would, so I would say even more elaborate scheme called PCF was there from 1997, which basically worked almost close to like a TDMA kind of an access, mechanism, right. Where the client can request, the access point can schedule, you will have service periods, etc. I would say the simple reason why it didn't take off is the enormous complexity around that for the traditional use case of Wi-Fi, which is, see, Wi-Fi has also been very comfortable for us to buy and deploy on our own. And if you take scheduled access, etc., it probably builds in extra complexity both at the AP level and possibly at the client level. So I think it's the whole cost, complexity, dynamics, and the use case which didn't demand that. We never saw a line of chipsets which supported PCF-based access. We never saw.
I agree with you on the PCF because I think that was not the right market for Wi-Fi. Maybe for Bluetooth and Zigbee, it's okay. But I think it is for the other reason where the Wi-Fi has so much bandwidth and data rate available, you don't have to go through the nav to route. You probably will get it easily. Your latency. So maybe that is one reason why it did not pick up. But now once the density increases, I think probably going back to nav might give the assured timing on
that spec is still there.
I know.
It's there, but it's just not implemented widely enough. Yeah. And also we must understand in Wi-Fi that a lot of things are thrown in the spec. Some get popular, and unfortunately some of them get lost because sometimes the low-cost clients which don't implement something, they can come and do a complaint saying that when I say the owner of that client comes and complains saying my Wi-Fi is not connecting. And the simple way the system administrators analysts turn off any of those complex features.
So one general question which already dates back to 82.11b onwards till now. When I look at the marketing documents of Wi-Fi, and I look at all the test reports, I typically see one access point in one station. Recently I've begun to see one access point in a couple of stations. But Wi-Fi is a network. Why is there no testing and evaluation done of Wi-Fi networks? It is left to the user to essentially handle that, and there is no support given for Wi-Fi network design. So can you explain that?
Actually, there are internal testing. I'm sure people like Arista, maybe Nadeem, if you want to add, please jump in.
We do have certification programs for that, for Wi-Fi optimization, Wi-Fi connectivity, both from the operator perspective and from the home perspective. Wi-Fi Alliance is doing a lot of work on the certification side, basically for that. But yes, you're right that how widely it is being used is still a question mark. And I'm very sorry to say that, and I always say this in every summit in India, that we are pathetically way behind in Wi-Fi deployment, implementation, everything compared to the rest of the world. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, India is probably 2 or 3 compared to 8 to 9 where it should be. And especially the reason is because the operators, the Indian operators are not focusing on Wi-Fi.
You talk about the positioning, right? So can you elaborate number of use cases if any study has been done where this positioning with respect to Wi-Fi will be used?
Oh, there are plenty of cases. I don't know, Param might talk about the Wi-Fi Alliance initiatives, but there are plenty of use cases starting from asset tracking, which already companies are doing with their own versions of, you can say, proprietary mix into the solution. Whether it is like tracking some asset in a hospital, which people have been doing, or a warehouse, Many of these things are already happening, but these are all having interventions from the infrastructure side, where they'll have to put some software at the back end to do certain things specifically and so on. To make it very seamless, for example, for us to find out whether our friend is close by or where I left my bag, I think if you want to make all those use cases, or you want to get into a car as you walk in with your Wi-Fi in your phone, etc., that's where interoperable efforts on scale is happening through 11AZ, prompted by some of the UWB offerings as well. Okay, I think I'll stop here. Maybe take the question. Should I announce, or you want to announce here?
I'll take 1 minute before we hand over. So just a quick word about our eco partner 14 Trees, as this is a large scale eco restoration project started by Dr. Praveen Bhagwat. He'll be here to talk about that a little later in the evening. But what we have done is, for every speaker today, Praveen has, his team has planted a sapling in the area just outside Pune. So he's also prepared nice personalized cards for each speaker. So I'd like to just give one to Srikanth. So if you can just show.
Thank you.
What you see is that on the card is a QR code. When you click on the QR code, it opens the personalized page for Srikanth, which has all the information about where exactly the tree is located. And he can go to that link and check out the progress of this tree, how much the height is changing, the color and everything. So it's a nice initiative from Praveen. He'll be here later in the evening and talk more about exactly the philosophy and the thought process behind this project.
Thank you.